Today's episode of Running It Back tackles true crime once again. That's right, we are adding to the network a monthly true crime installment. Brother Andrew is back, of course, to discuss another review of a true crime series. But first, I am back in studio. I am back from Salt Lake, back from stand-up comedy, which was excellent to get back to try actual spoken word in front of an audience. And I got to tell you, it felt great. Salt Lake does it right. Wise Guys Comedy Club. I will be back. So stay tuned for more dates coming. Can't wait to do it. And thank you for everybody who made that happen. Got to see comics, got to see audience, got to see the inside of a real club. That's the way it should be. I had a great time. But hey, right now, let's get back to true crime, shall we? We are reviewing this week the Netflix crime series Crime Scene. And for this episode, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. This is an LA story. This is a mysterious story. This is a internet angle to the story as well. So a lot to dissect in this one. It's on Netflix right now, so you can go check it out. It's a 4-episode series, and we're discussing parts 1 and 2 in the first installment. Second installment, episodes 3 and 4, will follow shortly. So buckle up, lock the doors. It's true crime, the Cecil Hotel, Vanishing, with me and my brother, Andrew Ramirez. Here we go. All right, we are back on the channel. Joining me this week, brother Andrew Ramirez, joining me as we continue our monthly true crime review. He's the curator of the Instagram account Murder Mecca. Andrew, thanks for joining me.
Hey, it's good to be back every month.
That's right. Well, this month we're reviewing the crime scene documentary, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. It's on Netflix right now. It's a 4-part series. But our reviews last month of the Night Stalker documentary gained so much attention that we decided to make this a monthly installment. True Crime Monthly.
Who would have thought during a pandemic people would be super down for true crime, right?
They love it. They can't get
Everyone's
enough.
loving it. Yeah, Netflix is pumping out the documentaries, and we can just keep pumping out the podcasts. No worries. It's easy.
Right. Yeah, we had a successful review of Night Stalker. Did you get some attention and comments on your end of things? I got a lot of like hearsay third-party stories saying, my aunt said he stayed at this hotel once.
Yeah. So I blasted it out on my Instagram true crime account. And then basically, so Murder Mecca has about 5,100 followers, more or less. And you can always count on about like per post, maybe anywhere between 15 to 45 comments on the post. Mm-hmm. So to kind of ramp things up for our podcast about Richard Ramirez, I was posting some Richard Ramirez content. I had like the shades picture in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. And I had I think I had another one where he's just posing, I think with his like prison scrubs on or whatever. And dude, the comments were pumping, man. Like I was getting tons of, like you said, like comments about like my uncle was on the LAPD like task force in the 80s, and the stories he says about like trying to catch Richard Ramirez, blah, blah, blah. Like it was all those kinds of comments, man. And I was like really, really digging it. And then guess what? Instagram took down the post. Instagram
really
took the post down, saying that it broke community guidelines and was glorifying violence or something like that. So I lost like one of my best posts on that page, man.
Really?
Not big of a deal. Like they didn't suspend the account or anything like that, but they took down that post. So I've been like analyzing what might have happened. And I think, because I have tons of, okay, first of all, that is like the least offensive post on that page. That page has some pretty hardcore posts that no one's ever like had taken down, or I think it's just because no one's reported it. But I think the Richard Ramirez post got like a bunch of attention, And I think some people might have found it like a little maybe glorifying in the sense that it was like the picture of him with his shades on, and it's kind of like a cool picture of him. And people are like posting like on the picture like Richie with like little hearts and stuff like that. So
Wow.
maybe it got reported because they thought it was like kind of like celebritizing like a murderer or something like that. I don't
I
know.
see.
But the thing that's messed up, man, is that it had nothing to do with me. All I did was make the post, and the caption was totally respectful. Like it was just like a fact about Richard Ramirez. And then like from it, the comments started flowing. And then maybe somewhere in the comments, like it people just like reported it because they thought it was like a little ridiculous or something. So anyway, that post got taken down, and then
Huh.
I appealed it. I wrote an appeal
Oh,
to Instagram.
taking it to the streets.
The first thing I did was I contested the removal, and they rejected my contestment. They were like, after reviewing, it was like instantaneous. Like I'm pretty sure it's automated. They were like, after reviewing your proposal, like we still find this post offensive and breaking of our, like it doesn't work with our community guidelines. So then I hit like the additional appeal button, and it lets you like write a statement. So all I did was write a statement about how like the post wasn't like glorifying Richard Ramirez's crimes at all. Like it was just like more of like a history scrapbook of like crimes throughout, American history, and it was like informative, and it never like misrepresents or mislabels anybody. The facts are all good, blah, blah, blah. So I wrote that thing out, and then I sent it in, and it's been like 3.5 weeks and I haven't heard anything. So I think it's got rejected, dude. It's done. But I haven't had any posts taken down since then. But I guess coming back to what you were saying, like Richard Ramirez like garnered a lot of heat from Murder Mecca. So it's a subject that everyone's pretty interested in, I guess, or at least
right. Yeah. 20 plus, not even 20, 40 years, almost 40 years later, still a lot of attention. Well, you're like the Larry Flint of Instagram posts.
Dude, I
took you down, you appealed, you're fighting in the courts.
I'm in the trenches right now trying to get justice. And dude, I wish I would have screen grabbed it, because when I opened my Instagram account, it just said your post does not meet our community standards. And then it was a little thumbnail of the post with like Richard Ramirez with the sunglasses on. Mm-hmm. And if I had more social media savvy, I would have screen grabbed that image on my phone.
Right.
That's and then true. I would have been able to post that on my Insta, dude. And then been like, look at what's happening. I could.
You're an outlaw.
I could have heard it. But dude, I was so stunned and like kind of like embarrassed, and like I just didn't know what was happening. And then like I just hit okay, or like I exit out of it, and I've never been able to get that screen again. So all they do is they give it to you right at the beginning, and then it goes away, and you never get any more information about it. It's just ripped from your page. So
right. It would be good to have that.
Next time it happens, I'm gonna just screen grab it, dude. That way I can get a little heat in the comments on that, because there's about like maybe 40 people who follow that account who are like consistent commenters on the pictures and stuff. And I have no idea who they are, but like they all would be like down to defend Murder Mecca. I feel like they're like loyal Murder Mecca fans. So I definitely got to try and do that next time. Hopefully I can get another hot post like the Richard Ramirez post.
Yeah. Well, we got this whole episode to generate a hot post from.
Hotel Cecil's a good time.
That's right. Well, you've arrived when one of your Instagram posts gets taken down.
It was definitely like a little merit badge, I felt like.
Right. Yeah.
It was like my first controversy.
A lot of heat on this Instagram account right now. Murder Mecca. Well, this month we're back at it. We chose a new true crime story. One that is like, well, the way we do it is we pick something that is either on one of the streaming services that we watch, and then everybody can just instantly go and watch it as well. So we're sort of picking stuff everybody can get into right away. There's no searching this out, our stories. So this month we are doing the Netflix series, I believe it's called The Crime Scene, and this one's called The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel is what we're reviewing this month. Little intro for the case. This case is from 2013, in which a traveling student visits Los Angeles and upon staying at the Cecil Hotel vanishes. Very little evidence is found until security video footage is discovered from an elevator showing erratic behavior of the missing student, Elisa Lam. This video, when released to the public, gives way to countless conspiracy theories, accusations, and gains worldwide attention. The hotel's history is brought into the forefront. Los Angeles' infamous Skid Row is dissected, and the case itself lend itself to main characters, all in an attempt to solve the case. Like I said, 4-episode series. We're going to do episodes 1 and 2 in this one. First of all, had you heard of this case before viewing the documentary?
Oh yeah. Not only had I heard about the case, I was living in LA when it happened, and I was working downtown during that time too. So I
2013. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was my first job. So I was maybe about 6 blocks from the Cecil Hotel.
Yeah, 2013. I don't think I was living here at the time.
I think you moved to LA in 2015.
I think I might have been a year away.
Yeah.
So you lived here. I hadn't.
I was working downtown during that time, and the Cecil, it was always outside of our window. And one of the guys who even worked at the company stayed at the Cecil when he was interviewing. And he kind of jokingly told us how it was like a shitty hotel that had really bad amenities and stuff like that. But he was kind of down for it because of it was kind of like a hostel vibe,
Mm-hmm.
So he stayed in a shared room with a bunch of other guys, and just had a really cheap room that he stayed at. But it was so crazy when this whole story happened, because I never forgot the guy who talked about staying at that hotel, and then just the fact that it was always down the street from us at work. So kind of trippy to hear this story. So to answer your question, I was totally familiar with the case and all of that when it was happening. I followed it so closely.
I had heard of this story already before, so I knew the outcome of the documentary already, but I had heard of this story in a little crime documentary that had 8 different cases explained inside of a half hour. So I already knew everything about it. And that was a quick little blurb. So I was curious what new information, if any, was going to be brought to light in this case. It's a 4-part series. Like I said, episode 1 starts with, I just sort of made a list of who I thought the main characters were in episode 1. See if you agree, disagree, or would add any to it. Main characters, of course, Elisa Lam, the victim, Tim Marcia, the main detective, Amy Price, the GM of the Cecil Hotel, Santiago Lopez, the maintenance man, Kenneth Givens, who I've named the Cecil Bum, and the Cecil Hotel itself are my main characters. Did I leave anybody out? Should I take anybody out?
That's a great cast right there. The only recommendation I would make is the couple that checks in from the UK.
Yes.
I forget their names, but that couple's essential for the character lineup.
Oh, okay. You found them essential. Okay.
I think I don't want to obviously give anything away if you don't know how it ends, but I think there's a little bit of a need for them in the lineup, I would say.
Yeah. I like the Kenneth Givens, who is just a bum who stayed at the Cecil. He doesn't have anything to do with the case. He's just there as kind of just talking about what the Cecil Hotel was, and he was just a bum.
Yeah,
but they found him. They gave him clothes and
the whole picture. It seems like a little bit of the Cecil, gives you that opening, personal experience vibe. He does. What does he talk about? He says some pretty interesting stuff. He makes it almost seem like a building out of Escape from LA, kind of, it's got its own culture and sense of law inside of the building. So he kind of, what does he say? I never went above the 6th floor in the 80s, because he said that anything above the 6th floor you were likely to get murdered, or that's where all the drugs got sold out of. So I thought, however I feel about the whole documentary in general, I did like him because he does kind of set the scene a little bit. I think he's the first person to talk in the documentary too. I think
he does speak a lot.
Opening monologue almost, So I thought he was good, but yeah, he is essentially a bum. who was just living at the Cecil, and I guess they got him and they were like, come tell us about your experience at the Cecil. But it's pretty good. I feel like he could get some like movie roles after like doing that. Pretty
You know,
pretty darn interesting.
you're almost changing my mind on Kenneth Givens because I found him totally unnecessary for most of the doc. And now that you sort of put into words, he's almost the embodiment of the Cecil Hotel. If you gave the Cecil Hotel a voice, it would be him. So maybe he's more important than I initially thought because he was just a bum who stayed there, nothing to do with the case.
Right.
I was like, what do we really need him for? But he did add some flavor.
Little flavor. Yeah, little
Yeah.
flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll take you through some of the timeline of this. We'll explain the case.
Okay.
A couple interesting points about this case. The use of social media Tumblr posts allow us to piece together Lisa Lamb's actions and plans. She goes to a bookstore upon her LA visit. She goes to a TV show taping, little things like that, because we had such little evidence when she vanishes that they're piecing together her trip through these Tumblr posts. And that sort of gets us rolling. This girl stays at the hotel, she disappears. And then essentially they have to backtrack and figure out who the heck is this person? What's she doing here? What's her deal? What's her state of mind? So it's one of those cases that you really start from zero. They had nothing to go off of initially.
Right. They really open it up with, like you said, like Kenneth Gibbons kind of paints you the canvas, gives you a feel of how bad it is. They very lightly touch on Richard Ramirez staying there too. I think they mention there's that great quote where she says the Cecil was where serial killers went to let their hair down.
Yeah.
So
there's a couple of funny quotes like that in this
really
doc.
catchy quotes like about the Cecil. So,
like a Club Med for a crime.
Exactly. Yeah, it was like a vacay for the worst of the worst. So I loved how they kind of set that up there, and then they kind of throw in the timeline of like how the Cecil was this beautiful hotel that just kind of got eaten by like Skid Row, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the lady Amy Price, who's the hotel manager, has that great quote where she was like, she describes the building as having beautiful bones, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So even though the building sucks in the 80s, like it still was like a beautiful building, like from like the 30s or the 20s or whenever it was made. But it's kind of tragic because it seems like it got eaten by the neighborhood a little bit and then like turned into this like totally other thing entirely where like it's attracting travelers like Elisa, you know, and then it's also attracting like 80-year-old sex offenders, you know, who literally can't stay at an apartment because no one will rent them an apartment, you know? So I thought it was kind of like a freaky, like they do a good job of painting like a freaky mix of characters that are all kind of just being thrown into this one building, you know, and then like setting the scene for what happens, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a good point. The Cecil itself was tourists, students, and recovering drug addicts, people who just got out of jail, and they were staying there all in one building in downtown Los Angeles is sort of the picture they're painting. And then I found the Amy Price general manager to be the perfect general manager for the Cecil because she's perfectly naive in being the general manager. She's managing this horrible hotel, and she's like, not really super familiar with its history, but she wants to do a good job. And she's appalled when she starts finding out all these disgusting things that have happened in the hotel. I liked her overall because she seemed like a genuine character and seems like she was very honest in the doc. I didn't get the feel she held anything back.
She totally comes off as like the character that you're like rooting for, because she talks about how they like repainted the interiors and stuff like that, and they did like a really good job like kind of bringing her back, you know, after like all of the horrible things that had already happened at that hotel. Because keep in mind, it's not like that hotel had its sketchy like deaths just in the 80s. Like I think the earliest death happened like in the 20s, where a guy jumped out of the window, and then there was like another murder where like this lady who used to feed pigeons at the fountain was like found brutally raped and murdered like in the room. And I think another person might have thrown his wife out the window or something, and then she hit a guy at the bottom and killed him too. Like,
Right. Yeah. There was a
so
2 death one.
all kinds of bad stuff happened at the hotel even before Amy Price even came in, So like it's almost like a Rocky movie, like she's bringing it back, like it's got this bad rep as like a seedy, like transient hotel, and like she paints the walls orange or whatever, and like makes the art a little different, brings some new furniture in, and like seems like, at least from the narrative of the documentary, like revitalizes it.
Yeah.
So I like that she's kind of like the can do kid a little bit, you're kind of with her story, you want her to succeed, and it seems like she does a great job. She's all proud of her stats and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah,
In an in an alternate universe, this is almost a redemption story of a Los Angeles landmark. It was
yeah,
bad. It's run down. This new person comes to manage it. It's a revitalization of the downtown Los Angeles in the early 2000s. And it could have been a great story if you were writing like a movie for it. But this crime is sort of shoved in the middle of it. Not that there's tons of crimes, but this mysterious crime is shoved in the middle with it. And then we're sort of learning of the case. And then we have my biggest pet peeve with documentaries is we have our first timeline break in the documentary,
mm.
which we which is what we liked about the Night Stalker doc, is that they did not have any of these. I blame like Tarantino for everyone having timeline breaks these days, having to go back 50 years in the middle of something. We have our first timeline break right as the case is explained, and they explain the construction of the hotel. So it goes all the way back to 1919, the construction of the hotel. The hotel opens in 1924. The stock market crashes, making the Cecil Hotel become this low rent, low income type of place. And then piggybacked on top of that, its proximity to Skid Row. And then we have to do a whole explanation of what Skid Row is to the audience as well.
Way too much. Hey, you're tapping on the same issue that I have with this documentary in the big picture, is that it takes 5 episodes to say what they could have said in like a 45-minute section, like it's so annoying how it like starts with the story, and then like you said, like cut to the like the sepia toned, like old, like filter of like
the old timey footage,
car
right?
bouncing down. The Hotel Cecil was built in, it's like, are we seriously doing this right now? Like, this is the classic, like, give you a little taste and then throw you back and like force you to watch like uninteresting shit. So
Yeah. I hate it. I hate when they do that.
I was annoyed by that too. Like, I enjoyed the history because I like knowing that stuff, but the transition is cringe. Like, it does make me like go, ugh, okay, here we go. Like, totally new storyline now. Like, everything's different now. Like, now I just have to learn about the history of this place, I guess. I don't like when they do that either. I thought that was a little much. They could have worked it into like her interview even, like I didn't like that they give you the old people imagery, like it's just really like, it seems like it's been done a million times, and it totally took me out of like the momentum that they had built. So yeah, that's a big kudos to the Night Stalker for not doing that. And then this one's kind of like same old shit, same old shit documentary about true crime now, but still had its moments.
Right. All interesting. It's a 4-part series. We've watched the whole thing already. This really could be done in 2, maybe 1 part. They could have done this story in one part. It goes, here's what it's attempting to put all in the story. We've got the crime, we've got the hotel, and they kind of touch on it that the hotel might be haunted or cursed. So we've got all that. We've got the social media, the internet explosion of it. This is all what they've bitten off and are attempting to tell in this 4-part series. So very ambitious of a storytelling. I don't know what the saying is or what director said it, but when you're making a documentary, don't let your documentary get in the way of a good story. And I think they had a little bit of this here. I think they packed on a little too much frosting on the story, and they do it early with the timeline break, early on in the building of the construction of the Cecil Hotel.
There's no need for it. They could have glossed over that so easily with just like this hotel was in LA since the 19 whatevers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it went from this to that, 2 minutes on it max, the end, you know, even then that's too much time. Because like you said, there's way more interesting content like the dawn of social media sleuths and all of the internet's like role in this case and everything. It is kind of like a bummer to see it go back to the old days for as long as it does. Because the only thing I found interesting about the history part was the previous murders or deaths or suicides that had happened in the building. I
Right.
thought those were, I liked those, like talking about someone who had been killed in the 1920s in that hotel. Like that kind of lends a little like kind of shining hotel vibe to the Hotel Cecil, you know? Um, I loved the discussion of like the anatomy of the building where they mentioned that like most buildings, it doesn't have the 13th floor. So it just jumps to 14. So then every time you hear that 14, you know that it's actually on the unlucky floor. Like it does good work there, but they totally like could have compressed it. I'm with you like 100%. It's a little
Yeah.
annoying. They could have streamlined it way more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
then of
we,
course, like the other thing that's like a little annoying too is like, um, I feel like it doesn't really get structured in the way where you'd want to ask questions in the order that it gives them to you.
mm-hmm.
So a
I
lot
had
of
that
times,
complaint as well. There were
I mean,
very easy questions to be asked,
yes,
and
yes,
unimportant ones were spent too much time on. Important ones were glossed over, which I'll get to. I have a few notes about that. It was frustrating in some points. Like, are we solving a case or are we doing the history of a hotel that may be haunted?
right.
And then like we act like surprised, like this is a hotel that has drug abuse, criminals, it's low rent, it's in a bad part of town. And then we're like, is it haunted? Like, whatever happened to just a place being fucked up? This is where bad stuff happens. And we're like, it might be a ghost. Like, no,
Yes,
these are bad people.
I agree. I think they could have cut down a little bit on the whole like paranormal activity vibe going on in the hotel. There's definitely a lot of reaching going on, you know. Anytime, I mean, anytime like you've got like the historians coming in, you know, like you know that they're always also kind of trying to write their like intros too, like when they're saying this shit. So like one person's talking about how the Cecil like sucks people in, you know, like with its
Right.
allure or something like that, and you're like, oh, shut up. Like, give me a break. There's no way that it's like, you know what's interesting about the Hotel Cecil is it's right next to another building where 40 people were murdered a year. You know, like
Yeah.
it's just the product of like a shifty neighborhood, you know. There's no way that the building's any more deadly than a building one block down, you know. So I don't mind it milking that for a little bit, but it does it way too much, and then it circles back to it a lot too. With the visuals too. Like I thought they could have condensed that so much because it's got a place. I like a little paranormal, you know. I don't mind when they scratch it a little bit, but this one definitely overdoes it. So
Yeah.
they could have cut so much fat by just getting rid of those comments, you know,
It
about the whirlpool of the Cecil attracting the worst people of LA. Like that was a little much, I thought. There were
it
tons of
seems
flop
like
houses in LA. Like
this
that's
is a
not the only
flop
flop
house.
house. Yeah.
It's
There were 30
a
other
flop
flop
house.
houses in downtown LA. They just demolished them. Like it
Yeah.
just so happens that the Cecil survived because someone bought it. You know, like not that interesting in my opinion. So they could have burnt through that quicker.
It seems like there's a episode of Drunk History or a sketch that could do a parody of these documentaries and just keep breaking the timeline until Christopher Columbus came to the US. You're like,
Right.
and in 1492, and then they waste time for 2 minutes there. Or you could say like there's, the most car accidents have happened in the 1984 El Camino. Are those cars haunted? We don't
Right.
know. We can make that same connection if we go down that road long enough.
Exactly.
Haunted El Camino. Well, we have that timeline break for about 6 or 7 minutes, and then we get back to the case, and it picks up with probably the most interesting part of this whole case, the elevator video footage. We're missing
Mm-hmm.
the girl. They're scrubbing through all the security footage, and they find video of her in the elevator, and she's doing spooky stuff. She's moving weird. She's hitting all the buttons. She's jumping in and out of the elevator. And that I thought was the best part of the episode is that elevator footage is compelling.
So interesting. I remember watching that when they released it in 2013, and I was ignited by that fire of like, you got to be kidding me. Like, there's four different storylines that you could paint in that 4 minute video. You know, like the one that is most appealing to me was the she's being pursued by somebody and like runs into the elevator and like is hitting a button and like the door's not closing because he's like keeping it open like at the controls or something like that. You know, like that's if you watch that video and you don't know anything, that's totally plausible. You know, seeing the way she kind of huddles in the corner like that, like freaky, totally gave me the chills. And then there's the she's on a bunch of drugs theory, you know, where she's on acid or something and is being pursued by 19 like zombie knights or something, you know, and
Right.
like runs into the elevator and hits the button and like all of that is just taking place in her mind, you know. You got that. Then you have a combination of the two, which is probably the scariest scenario where she's on drugs that a creepy guy gave her and like now he's chasing her like in the hotel. Like all of it totally like didn't check out and also like made you feel like you could solve it, really. It was really interesting the feel that video had in 2013 where like I remember watching it at work and like being like, if I watch this 5 more times, I bet I can crack it. You know, like and it wasn't just me, like everybody had that feeling. Like it was like there's just one little thing I'm missing and I'm gonna get this, you know?
Yeah.
So I was totally ignited by it too. The scratched out timestamp in the bottom left hand, you're like, why is that scratched out? You know, like it all stirs up like this conspiracy theory, like supernatural, paranormal, like just everything got tapped into from that video. So yeah, I was on that wave. Not as hardcore as anyone in that like documentary, but I felt like the urge to like devote an evening to like trying to figure that out.
I
It was
think
intense.
you hit on it. You watch that video and your instinct is, I think I could figure this out. I think everybody sort of thought that. And then they watch it and then your brain just sort of runs wild from there. And that's what kind of spurs on all the YouTube stuff when they reveal it to the public, all the interest in it, all the theories of it. Here's my basic questions with the elevator footage. Tell me what questions you had. Number one, why was the door staying open? An elevator door opens and then, you know, after a few seconds usually closes. It doesn't close for this whole video, which is, I think it's 2 minutes long. So question number one, from a detective point of view, why isn't that door closing? Number two, when they ask her behavior, I think it's pretty obvious. Like, is she messed up? Is she drunk? Is she high? Is she on something? I didn't think she looked scared in the video when they're asking, is she being pursued by somebody? Look, she's looking around. Yeah, she's looking around, but she doesn't seem scared. She doesn't seem like she's avoiding somebody. She's jumping in and out of the elevator almost like a game. So she didn't seem scared to me as well. And then ultimately, she doesn't even get in the elevator. She leaves the elevator at the very end of it. And then I did like the part where she's waving her hands in a weird way. And then one of the YouTubers asks, could she be conjuring up a spirit?
Yeah,
Like, is
what?
that where your brain goes to
Not
instantly? Is that how you conjure a spirit?
Not only does a YouTuber say that, one of the detectives even says that. He even says, he was like, I was looking in the video and it seemed like she was conjuring something, you know?
Right.
And it's like, you have got to be kidding me right now. Like, you guys couldn't check the water tanks? Like, give me a break. Like, this is such a botched investigation. Like, it's one thing if a YouTuber says it, like they serve their purposes, like people who do that. But when the cop is using that kind of terminology, it's like, we need a better team on this one, you know?
I didn't think it
This
was a
one-
cop. It was one of the cops who said that.
it's the one in the leather jacket. It's the guy in the leather jacket.
Okay. Yeah, he was the cop.
It's not the main cop who's got like more of the big honcho vibe. It's the younger guy who's got like a gray shirt with a leather jacket.
Yeah, I didn't have him as one of my main characters. You're right.
Oh no, he's like a side guy. He's definitely just like a detective that was on the case. But
Yeah.
yeah, ridiculous. I was like, oh, give me a break. Like, you can't be saying that kind of stuff. Like, you're a
If
cop.
if this was a movie, he would be Joe Pantoliano. He would be the
Oh,
side
nice.
character that everybody
Yeah.
knows his face. He'd be like, could this be a poltergeist? And be like, get out of here.
Get
Get out
out
of
of
here. Go
here.
get it. He's just hanging
It's like,
around. Right. I was like, conjuring a spirit.
what do we pay you for? Why are you in this position to say like, oh, it might have been witchcraft that went wrong or something? Like, it's obviously not that. Like, but then again, you got the whole vibe where it is a documentary that's taking place about 8 or 9 years after the event. So, these guys are retired. These guys are doing their thing. Like, they probably have a little bit more like romanticizing of like the whole experience now,
Mm-hmm.
because at its root, it's just a 100% botched police investigation. Like, at its root, it is so incompetent how they handled it. I feel like one of the first things you would do is check a water tank, especially when it's got a hatch with a ladder that goes up it. So
Mm-hmm.
pretty ridiculous, but at the same time, they did a pretty good job of like developing it with the guys. They didn't come off as hateable as I thought they were going to come off. They did a good job of laying the facts out. So
Mm-hmm.
for what it was, I thought the cops were all right. They don't compare to Gil Carrillo from The Night Stalker. Not
Oh
even
no.
close.
Gil Carrillo would have had this solved inside of 42
if
minutes.
you got a little like bar ratio thing going on, Gil Carrillo's like out of the screen, and these guys couldn't be lower. Like, and I honestly, that affects my watching of the documentary, is that I could not get behind the cops. I was like, these guys are like just doing a bad job. So that was kind of an issue that I had with it. But the cops were what they were. They were all right.
Well, episode 1 ends with the elevator footage being released to the public. And then that gives birth to all the YouTube attention, all the media attention. We start getting interviews from people that are just titled as YouTuber, web sleuth. And they kind of just dissect the video. And it's almost like they want something to be in the video that isn't there. And that's why I just want to just ask the question, why is the door staying open? What's up with the timestamp? And then let's start getting the answers. But that's as episode 1 ends, which I wouldn't say was the perfect hook for episode 2, but I think it achieved its job. I was pumped up for more dissection of the video, even though it took us a long way to get there. I thought the video was like, okay,
yeah,
good way
so
to
remind me of the hook. What's the hook between 1 and 2?
The video. As episode 1 ends, we're just sort of breaking the video apart and we've just released it to the public. So now it's like everybody's got eyeballs on it and everybody's got a thought on it. And then that's when episode 1 ends. And then we roll into episode 2, which starts with Amy Price, the GM, the wonderfully naive GM of the Cecil Hotel, talking about her first days on the job as GM, and someone died in the hotel. And so we keep hammering the point that this is a dangerous place. Bad stuff happens at the Cecil Hotel. And then we start learning about John Lorden, the YouTuber, who seems to have spent the most time on this of anybody else. And then we're back to the video. So we're into the video. It's gotten millions of views at this point. So now we've got this crime scene sensation. And I wrote down the investigation now is at the point where it reveals that Lisa has had mental illness in the past, depression, bipolar disorder, and she was on medication for it. Here's number 1 of big thing we glossed over. This is a huge piece of evidence as far as figuring out her behavior on this trip. It seems like that was huge, and erratic behavior would be something that could have a correlation to that. Glossed over quite a bit. Then 100%. We dissect the video again. This is what I wanted to see, the dissecting of the video. One of the detectives writes or states, she's stable on her feet, so we can rule out being drunk, but she has unusual hand movement. So we might have LSD, hallucinogens in her. She was, here's okay. Number 1 biggest gripe. She was staying in a room when she moved into the Cecil Hotel with 2 other girls who complained about her behavior, and she was moved to her own room. We never interview those girls. We never find those girls.
Right.
We never get further information from those girls. In a documentary where we're interviewing random bums, we don't interview these two material witnesses, or at least we can say, like, we couldn't find these girls or they didn't want to be interviewed. Huge, huge hole in the story. Right. Did you notice that? Did that bother you? What were your thoughts on that first?
No, that's just like, that's like a good example of something that happens where it initially catches your attention, and then you think that it's going to be addressed within the next scene or two, you know? Because I remember the part you're talking about where they say she was initially in like a group room, and then the girl said that she was acting weird, which directly ties in with her acting weird at the elevator. So if the girl saw her doing that shit in the room too, then you would immediately know that when she's doing it in the elevator, it probably has nothing to do with what's really happening, you know? So the fact that they don't address that makes it almost seem like the girls all did say she was doing that weird shit like in the room too, and that's why they moved her, you know? Like, it's a moment where you could address a whole issue in 2 seconds, and then like you could move on to the next thing. So I'm with you. When the documentary glosses over that, I do kind of question like the integrity of the narrative, you know? Like, they're not giving you facts to inform you really, like they're kind of just trying to lead you on. So it kind of tickles that like I'm being fucked with sensor, you know, a little bit, where like they're devoting all this time to YouTubers like rambling about like a bit of a shoe in a shot, you know? And like,
I have that, yeah, as a big gripe, the shoe one.
They're not dedicating any time to really logical, precise questions, you know? If you were to grade this in a written form essay, like this would not be good. You'd be like, there's no evidence in any of this. Like, you're just rambling, you know? So they don't anchor it in any evidence, which would be so helpful, you know? So yeah, I definitely didn't like that part.
Yeah. I feel like Gil Carrillo would have been at those girls' doorstep, figuring it out right then and there. We wouldn't have gone this long dirt road roundabout way of continuing the case. And then, like I wrote in my notes, I titled this note Speculation City. The foot in the video comment from the YouTube, or sorry, from the web sleuth guy is ridiculous. She steps out of frame. Where her foot would be is a little speck. She walks away, the speck disappears, and he goes, it seems like that's someone else's foot. Like, right. Or that's her foot. What's the logical explanation? That's her foot. Drove me crazy. Like, you want something to be here that isn't there. Web sleuth guy.
No, and it's like, it's okay if he says that because he's like allowed to say weird shit, but it's annoying when the documentary doesn't address what he's saying. Like, it just kind of leaves you off there and says like, okay, like now you get to kind of fester on that a little bit, you know? And it's like, I was yelling at the screen when that happened. I was like, that's so obviously the back of her sandal, you know, like her foot goes up and the sandal goes with it, you know, like that's how sandals.
That's what I saw too. That's how I saw it.
Like, it was like, come on, you know, like the other thing that's annoying is like when she's hitting all these buttons, like, hey, maybe there's a fucking button that holds the elevator door open, you know, like maybe we can
another easy question to ask.
Yeah, it's like, did she hit, she clearly hits a bunch of floors. Like, did she hit something that said hold elevator, you know? Like, so much of that is like, give me the facts as the questions come. And when the documentary doesn't do it, it's kind of trying to do this like hypnotizing you with like a weird story thing that like doesn't check out when you have like that many questions and like the whole documentary is hinged on her going missing, you know? So it totally drops the ball there from like a pacing standpoint.
Yeah. And in that, the web sleuth guy, he's the only one that has that foot thought. So why are we paying so much attention to this dude who has one sort of thought? Imagine if like you're watching football and the quarterback throws the ball, but the ball goes out of the frame and then the receiver catches it and you go, we don't know that the quarterback threw that.
Right.
The football went out of the frame. Like, I think we know. I think we can make an educated guess.
Seriously. Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a waste of camera time.
The other thing that's annoying too, this one isn't as like radioactive when it comes to like irritation, but the one that also kind of bit me the wrong way was when the guy complains that the elevator like skips 2 frames and goes from here to there.
Yeah,
you know,
I had that in my notes too.
That's like those security cameras like shoot such low frame rates that like there's almost entire seconds like missing from those videos, like the whole point is just to give you like a general idea of what's going on, but like it's not like they're going to be storing like HD quality like video. Like it's a 24-hour camera that plays in a shitty hotel elevator, like
Yeah.
that thing's like a Game Boy Color when it comes to like the evidence you're going to get, so like they make a huge deal out of the elevator, like it literally skips like 3 seconds or something in the
Hmm.
frame, and they're like, what could have happened, like 18 guys in tuxedos and like a bunny mask like came in and like kidnapped. It's like, give me a break. Like these are such small things to be saying about a video, it's like just let's interview people other than this guy, like bring in more interesting people to talk about this video, because this guy's ridiculous, that, what I would have loved in that moment is some good police discussion, like if the cops kind of took you through the video and gave you their experience with other surveillance videos and like the weird things that happen in other surveillance videos and how they compared their experience to this, like that would have been white hot for me, to get a little
That would have been good.
comparative surveillance talk, because what I didn't need was like YouTube speculative, like paranormal cover up talk,
Hmm.
like it was just so empty and shallow and like just bird brained, like so I would have switched that out for some cop talk right there. I think that would have
We
been more
had
for me.
we had good video dissection, but before that, we had our second big time break in the documentary, and this one started with Amy Price's journey to Los Angeles. So
Right.
we had to
Yeah.
dissect how the general manager of the Cecil came to Los Angeles, and then we had to do a little book report on Los Angeles's downtown renaissance in the late 90s. And that we had 2007, Hotel Cecil is sold. We had more history on the hotel, where the first confirmed death is recorded in 1931. Then we had to explain the Night Stalker story all over again, as he stayed in the Cecil Hotel for a short amount of time. So we had to dive into all that again, explain his range of crime, and then we had to explain, which actually was kind of interesting, the inception of the idea of changing the Cecil into two hotels within one building. So apparently the idea was they were going to renovate it, but the city had it designated as it had to stay 50% permanent residence availability. So the GM had this great idea, is like, let's just make some floors a hotel and we'll name that part Stay on Main Hotel. We'll paint it different. It had its own lobby, it had its own front door, it had new rooms, new bedding. I thought that was a genius idea, but we had to have that explained. So essentially, Elisa Lam didn't stay at the Cecil. She stayed at the Stay on Main portion of the hotel.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting, kind of a long way to go for it, but I thought that was kind of cool that they attempted. Also, honorable mention in this documentary, as much as I shit on it, great drone footage in this doc. Great overhead shots of the city, of downtown, of the hotel itself. Excellent doc for drone footage.
Oh, I don't want to shit on this doc at all. I watched it 2 times and it is very slickly done. Like
Good
all
point.
of the footage is beautiful. Like you said, like the flying drone footage over the Cecil is like so nicely done. And like the editing is smooth. Like it's almost designed for you to do a task while you're watching it,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have to pay attention to it to follow it. Like if you pay attention to it, it's almost aggravating. But if you kind of are like sending emails or like cooking or something and it's playing in the background, it is really enjoyable to listen to and to look at, So that's kind of like the vibe I'm picking up on it. The more I think about it, is like it's almost like designed for you to not really be paying full attention to it, because the way it circles back to the same ideas a lot of times and like says stories again and just like different framings, like it really is designed for half of your attention maybe. So
Yeah.
the visuals are beautiful. I love that. And then the way they tease out the narratives of like Amy Price and Elisa and everyone. Like it's really well done. It's just like jammed together in a really weird way where like it doesn't follow a narrative really. It's just like too much at once, you know?
Mhm.
But packaged really nicely. Really
Yeah,
nice
it is a
package.
good looking piece of film. I would say this is good frames, bad lenses
Yeah.
as far as what the overall package. Also music, the creepy violin,
Hmm.
almost kind of like the movie Beetlejuice-esque, where you're like, something creepy is happening here because the music is creepy. That puts, yeah,
Totally.
that I on the second time I watched it, I wasn't as scared. The first time I watched it, just because of the music, I was like, okay, we're going into a different kind of place now because we've got creepy violin going.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have liked to just even, I mean, they show you like a few shots of like what it looks like inside the hotel, but like I would have liked a little more like boots on the ground footage, you know, of like maybe one of the documentarians like walking through with like a GoPro on her head or something, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and maybe like because what you got to do with these docs is you really got to cater to like the true crime fixation on details. You know, like I would have appreciated a step count from the elevator to the window where she supposedly climbed up to the ladder. You know, that way
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of take yourself out of the surveillance camera and like see the whole hallway, you know? Because that was really interesting to me too, is like, what did she do after the elevator? You know, like it does. I mean, I assume that she just went up to the roof, but like, did she stop by her room real quick? Did she linger?
Right. Big mystery between
It's
elevator and death. You're right. We
yeah. So
don't
like
know if that was her last stop or not.
exactly. So
So
like
it's
it's
just the
like
last footage we have.
exactly. Like so I would have loved if they would have just fixated more on maybe her actions right after the video, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And take you from there because I would love to know the step count. I would love to know like they really tie in a little interesting fact with the scent dogs picking up on her
Mm-hmm.
scent in the hallway and then going to the window and then losing the scent. Like duh, like maybe she went through that window, you know? So like all of those details are very CSI feeling and like the documentary totally isn't interested in doing that kind of stuff,
You're
which is
right. I'm just
so
not interested.
annoying. It's annoying. Like I get it though. I get it. They're focusing more on like the cultural shock of like Elisa Lamb and like how it whipped up all these emotions online and like she was prolific on her Tumblr, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So she did write tons of entries that they like people would read and try and decode and stuff. So that's what the documentary is hitting on, and I get that. But I like the more CSI, like numbers, like dollars and cents style of like counting the steps, letting you know what the shoes were, like what kind of shoes was she wearing, you know, like all of that stuff is
Mm-hmm.
interesting to me, and it totally didn't scratch that for me. So I kind of was annoyed at it for that.
Yeah, me too. Me too as well. Also, if we're going down the cultural road, how come the Cecil Hotel didn't have a spooky nickname? You know, it was just a Cecil. So what about Hotel Hell?
Oh,
Or what else could you name the Cecil Hotel? If this was a movie, that hotel has a cool nickname.
yeah.
What
Maybe
would
they
have,
could
I'm gonna
call
have to
it
come back to that.
the de-Ceciled Hotel.
Ooh, not bad. I
That
like
would
it.
be good. Yeah. Something,
Right.
yeah. I think it didn't really have a reputation, man, because like it just had a reputation for being a shitty hotel, you know? The stay on Main is just a classic tourist trap where
Ooh,
like,
what about Stay on Slain?
oh, that's good. That's
Oh,
good. I like
that's
that.
right. End the
That's
episode.
good. Stay on Slane.
Stay on
Yeah, they just
Slain.
it's a tourist trap. They just like that's
So
not
I
the
get paid the
first
medium bucks.
it, as if this is like the first hotel to split itself down the middle and like renegotiate a
That's
new,
true.
you know, like all of these things happen in LA all the time. So I think it kind of plays into like this like LA's this dark place of black magic and like you can walk down these streets and like you'll be offered heavy narcotics every step you take. You know, like
Right.
I've walked through Skid Row many times and it's very dangerous, don't get me wrong, but it is a bad part of town, you know? Like it's just a horrible part of town, you know?
Yeah.
It's not like there's knife fights every time you walk through it. There's also functioning bars and there's businesses and stuff. So there's a little bit of overkill when they talk about like what that place was like, you know.
Mm.
Now, the only caveat I have to say is that I didn't move to LA till 2008. So I was there for 10 years starting in 2008. And Amy Price does say Skid Row got a lot better after 2007. So I
Mhm.
do got to take that into consideration. I went there when it was supposedly on the rise. So I can't speak to what it was like before that. It could have been horrendous. But my experience with Skid Row was just like any other really bad part of town. It was like, definitely be aware of your surroundings. Try not to walk through it at 3 a.m., you know, like,
Yeah.
but other than that, just you can do it. Just walk straight, look like you know where
Yeah.
you're
I've
going and
walked through it before.
roll
It
with it.
was
Yeah.
it was the daytime. In fact, I might have walked through it with you once or twice, and definitely needles on the ground. I definitely
Yes.
saw needles.
Dirty. It's very dirty.
It's dirty. And
Yeah.
then, but the tell sign of a bad neighborhood is random dogs. There's random dogs running all over the place.
They're dogs.
There's
Yeah.
cars going the wrong way in the street. There's guys on bicycles zigzagging the street. You definitely want to get the hell out of there. I don't know if I would go as far as saying my safety was in question, but I did want to get out of there. Didn't look good, but it was
Mhm.
in the daytime. So
Yeah. It's just it's like the bad part of town, you know, like let's get out of here, you know.
mhm.
Let's not linger here. Don't talk to anybody, you know, like if someone comes up to you, just keep walking, you know. It's all of those
Get the hell
rules,
out of
you
there.
know, just
Yeah.
keep moving, you
Walk
know.
quickly out of there.
And
Yeah.
I will say an amazing thing about Skid Row is it is very much one step to the right and you're on Skid Row.
Mm-hmm.
If you go one road over, you'll see these trendy whiskey and cigar bars, you know?
Yeah.
And then
And
if
I think
you
that's how
knock
most people end up accidentally walking through it.
Yes. Yeah, that's the first time
That's what
I
happened
did
to
it. The
me.
first
You're
time I
kind
did
of
it, I was shortcutting and I just went through Skid Row and I was like, holy shit, where am I? You know? And then one street over, it's gone. And you're like, oh my God. So I'll give the doc credit. Like all of the discussion about like the police, like kind of penning all of the homeless people into this one section of town and like not letting them leave, you know, like that's pretty interesting because Skid Row is very bordered. Like there's no hobo or homeless people overflow. Like it's all contained in Skid Row, even to the point where like it feels like it's District 9. Like there's tents on the sidewalks and like just people like motionless in the street, no cars really
yeah.
drive through. It feels like another part of the world. So I appreciated the doc talking about how the police like kept it that way and like how fucked up that was because it that was totally true. I got that experience of like almost walking through an invisible glass where like you could get out but like no one could follow you. It was really bizarre,
Mm-hmm.
really creepy.
Right. And they're trying to wedge all that into this doc. So again, back into like they bit off so much and
Right.
couldn't chew it all up in not only 4 episodes, but a doc that's not even really about Skid Row.
Right.
So all that being said, now we come back to the video after this huge detour, and then we can ask the questions that everybody's asking. Number one, the timestamp on the video. Number two, the door. And then my favorite one was the video edited by the hotel. The hotel that can't even have clean water has
Yeah.
video editing
Yeah. Great.
equipment.
Yeah.
That was a stretch. So, what about the timestamp? Did you agree with the timestamp question? Did you think it was bogus?
Okay. I
Because
agree
the
that it's
timestamp,
weird.
basically, for people who don't know, it's muddled in the video. Like you can't legibly see numbers. You see the stopwatch moving, but I couldn't see physical numbers, and it
Right.
sort of stops and starts.
Kind of has like that Predator feel, you know, where like it's that weird numbering where you can't make any of it out, you
Yeah.
know. So for me, honestly, I get that it's sketchy, you know, like I can understand why you'd want the time there, you know, but in my initial viewing of it, I just assumed the police had scrubbed it for security reasons, you know. I think their goal wasn't to let the public know the exact time that it was going on, you know, because what if you were involved? There's your alibi, dude. I was with my girlfriend from this time to this time. And then the cops were
Oh,
like,
okay.
oh, the cops were like, oh, darn. Like, well, I guess your alibi is perfect, all because the guy saw the video. So that's very basic cop work where they won't give you the time, you know? Why would they let you know when it happened? Like, that is exactly how people make up alibis, you know? So the cops don't want you to know that time. That way your story is supposed to correlate with that time, you know? So again, the fact that the documentary doesn't address this is crazy. Like, they make it seem like it's intentional. Like, of course it's intentional. Like, the police department only needs to let you know what you need to know. Their investigation would be contaminated if you knew the exact time that she was supposed to be in that elevator. So in my head, I just assumed the police scrubbed it, you know, that way you couldn't see it.
I didn't even think of about that aspect, but that makes sense from the alibi standpoint. So you're saying the police just put essentially edited over the top
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I
time.
totally don't know if that's true. That was my initial assumption when I watched it.
Yeah.
Because I noticed it. I was like, oh, the numbers are all effed up. And then I was like, I bet the cops blocked that out. So you don't know the time, you know?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to know the time. You're just
They
supposed to
could
know what
have,
she looks
yeah.
like, see if you recognize her. That's what it's for, you know?
They could have
So,
almost edited the frame if they had this technology, just move the frame up enough to cover up
yeah,
the timestamp in the corner
that's a
if they could have.
little public relations at the police
Right.
department could have made that really easy on them and just
Right.
been
That way
like,
it
just
wouldn't
cut
send us
it.
down
Yeah.
that road.
Because it
And
looks like
then
a guy literally got on Microsoft Paint and just like
scrubbed it up.
scribbled over it. Yeah. And was like, you can't see it anymore, you know? So,
Right.
yeah,
I chalked it up to just the hotel having a shitty video camera.
that
just
too. Yeah.
just
Honestly,
like,
that too.
when we've all done videos where it skips, because the technology is
Dude,
struggling or buffering or
or
something like
honestly,
that.
like, tell me the last time that like the coffee maker had the right time, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it could have been a case where that thing said like January 4th, you know, like 1920, you know, like they might have never set the timestamp right either. So it's not like these things are connected to the internet. Like, these things are just running on their own independent system. And probably, I bet that software was old as hell, dude.
Yeah, had to be.
That's not gonna have good surveillance camera software. There's been 80 murders in there, like, over the 10 years. Like, no one cares what happens there, you know? So it felt like it was interesting material that they were almost mishandling a little bit, you know? They were indulging things for a little too long than I thought they should have. So, and that was
Yeah.
an example of one of them, was the police numbers. I would
I
have
think
loved the
that's a good way
perspective.
of putting
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went down this road too far.
Yes.
We needed to focus on other stuff in the video. And then the episode 2 ends with 19 days after her disappearance. The English couple, who I had no idea what the hell they were doing in this episode at the beginning, they're the ones who essentially, I guess, stumble upon discovering the body because the water pressure is bad. They complain. They go to another room. Still, water pressure is bad. Then the maintenance guy, Santiago Lopez,
Love him.
goes to check out the water tank, and that's when he finds the body. But like, before we get to that, I like when the English couple was in the room and they said, we wanted to move rooms because someone was having a party below us and we noticed a smell of weed.
Yeah, that made me laugh out loud.
That was great. We noticed a smell of weed.
Yeah. I was
That was
like,
great.
that's hardly the worst thing that's happening at that hotel, is like a drifting smell of weed, you know?
I
Yeah.
almost thought it was they were covering their own ass. Like they were the ones smoking the weed and they were
seem
like,
like
we
stoners,
smelled
yeah.
weed.
That's
It was
funny. Yeah.
great. It added some good levity to the story.
They're my favorite characters in the whole series, or the
Oh,
whole
interesting. You got
episode
them
run.
as
I
characters in
love
the
them.
series.
Yeah, because they seem like normal people, you know? All of the things they do make sense too. They're like, yeah, we noticed the water pressure was low, so we complained, you know, and they moved us to another room and it was still bad. So we complained again, you know, like, they admit that they thought it was going to be nicer than it was, you know, like they get to the hotel and they were like, the lobby's so ornate and like beautiful columns rising up. And then as soon as you get in the elevator, like, all the floors suck. They're just like these decrepit rooms that are all dusty, and like, the guy says the carpet stuck to his foot. He was like,
Yeah.
it was like you're walking on like Velcro kind of. So they do like a really good job of like painting a picture and a narrative that you can follow, you know? So I loved their whole take on it, you know? They admit that they were burned by a shitty hotel and they were like, well, look at the bright side. Like, at least we don't have to spend all day in it. Like, we can just cruise around LA and then just come
Yeah.
back at night or whatever. So very relatable, very understandable, and you totally sympathize like with them when you find, when like the water starts clogging and stuff. That's the most like, oh, churning my gut moment. So I love them as characters. I thought they were really, really great for the story.
So we
Just
find we
cool.
have the
Just a cool
body.
couple.
We now discovered the body. The search is over. We have the body. That's how episode 2 ends. So good ending to the episode. Got us hooked to find like, all right, now we have the body. We know where she is. She's dead. She's in a water tank naked. And now we almost have a whole new investigation going into episodes 3 and 4 of it. So summarizing episodes 1 and 2, we've got a crazy hotel with history. We've got Los Angeles. We have, on top of all this, a really mysterious case. A girl checks into a hotel, disappears. That's essentially the case. She disappears. And then we've got this video footage that is really creepy. And we're sort of off and running as we summarize it. That alone, just the video footage alone, is enough to make a whole story out of it. And we, like you said, you watch it and you're like, I gotta figure this out before I can move on. It's almost like the kid in high school you thought was gay, but you're like, all right, I just need to know, and then I can move on with my life. I don't care either way, but I need to know what's going on, and then I can continue.
Oh, right. Yeah. I need to know.
I didn't know what your deal is.
Straight guy or a gay guy right now. I just need to know, man, because I'm feeling a lot of stuff right now too. Dude,
same with the elevator footage. I need to know where she went, how she died, and then I can continue.
I felt like, one thing they touch on is the last bookstore. Remember they talk about that? They talk about the last bookstore.
That's right. She went to a bookstore.
That's a great bookstore that they don't delve into enough, because that book, and honestly, maybe the last bookstore was like, you cannot talk about us too much. Like, you can mention us, but you can't bring us up. They might have said that too, but that bookstore is creepy, dude. That is like, and she went to that bookstore before she went back to the hotel. And dude, I'll be honest with you, that bookstore has lots of little corridors and like little rooms where like you could get stalked in that bookstore. Like, if you're not familiar with the last bookstore, it's like in an old like 1920s style building, just like the Hotel Cecil, just like maybe a few blocks over. And like the front area is like very beautiful and like ornate, and it's like huge and wide open. But then you can go up onto other floors, and like they get like you're in more like tight, narrow, like small rooms and stuff like that. And it's just a really big space too, with lots of shelves and stuff. So almost like a maze, and it talks about her like shopping there for like an hour or a couple of hours or something like that. I think that would have been a cool like storyline that they could have delved into if they wanted to, where they talked about how like it is a spooky bookstore, and maybe somebody like followed her from the bookstore, and like kind of develop that narrative by showing you the inner like corridors of that bookstore, man. Because there's freaky, like they have weird art exhibits there sometimes, and like you could totally write a horror story about someone who goes to that bookstore and gets picked up on, So knowing everything about that store, I was like, I can't wait for them to get into this. And then they never did. So maybe the last bookstore didn't want that negative publicity, and they were just like, don't talk about us, But if they could have, I feel like they should have, because that bookstore, if you haven't gone, you should go. It's a spooky bookstore. It's cool. It's really cool.
I've never been. Ironically, that's the part of the story they left out and continue the timeline of all the avenues they went to waste time on. The last bookstore was totally skipped.
It's called the last bookstore. It's just amazing. Great.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about the last bookstore. Well, that's episodes 1 and 2. We found the body. We're hooked. As much as, again, as I've shit on this documentary, I never wanted to not finish it. I wanted to continue watching the whole thing. So it did do a good job of hooking me after episodes 1 and 2. We have a body. We're going into episodes 3 and 4. Now we're in the meat of it. So that's part 1 of our review. We had a lot to dissect, had a lot to digest with that first one. As you'll see, 3 and 4, no
You know,
different. It's a lot.
Just imagine, like just the horror of like when you said had a lot to digest. Another thing I'd be interested in knowing is like some of the legal ramifications of having a body decomposing in a water tank and having tenants drink that water. Like I wonder how much they got sued for by that couple who drank the girl,
Mhm.
Like there were lots of interesting things there that I would have liked to know more about that they didn't touch with like a 10-foot pole, Because what if you were drinking that person, and you were
It's
in
true.
that hotel and you were showering in it and stuff? I would be like, I need like a full health check right now,
Mhm.
like I've been drinking that girl. Like I probably have so much bacteria in my stomach that's just running amok, like, and then damages, like what if you were like a devout, I don't know, whatever type of religion you have to be to make cannibalism like a offensible sin by death, I'd be like, the fact that I drank that girl means I have to go kill myself. So I need this much money immediately, like there were lots of people in that hotel who technically drank her. So I
Right.
just would have liked to have known the different ways that was handled other than like, oh, gross,
The
So
death water.
just another thing that's interesting, really, really interesting. And then of course, the the meat and potatoes of her body being discovered by Santiago, and like walk me through it step by step. The
Right.
fact that they
As
didn't
we'll
do that.
see, they
Yeah.
glossed over a couple of details.
Yes.
Santiago says, I went up to the water tank and I found the body. And as we'll see, there's a big part. We need to know how he found the body that is probably in that interview, but is edited out and we don't find out till later. The very important part, whether the water tank was covered or not. So
Yes.
that was another editorial choice to get us into episodes 3 and 4, which we'll do our review on, our part 2 of the review coming up next. So True Crime, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, part 1. This was good. This went down a lot of roads, much like the documentary. We went down a lot of roads.
Yes, we did. Good times. I'm looking forward to doing the other episode.
Part 2 coming up.
As always, at Murder Mecca.
There's his Instagram.
Mecca. There's the Instagram. If you want to follow it, you can see all the Richard Ramirez posts that have been taken down for their white hot controversy. Apparently,
you're a renegade.
I'm a renegade. It's all taken off, man. They say once you got the haters, you're on the right track. So we're rolling.
We will see you for part 2, Andrew. Thanks.
All right, later.
That does it for the first part of our true crime series, The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel. Andrew Ramirez, Patrick Ramirez. We will be back for part 2 of it. We've had some ups and downs with parts 1 and 2. What about 3 and 4? Gonna see where this case leads us. I am enjoying this, even though I was very critical. The fact that the Cecil Hotel didn't even have a cool nickname. Went off in the weeds a couple times. But the thrilling conclusion to come. I'll be there. Andrew will be there. Stay tuned for it. Thank you for listening to the part 1. We'll see you for the next one.